welcome everybody to our first lecture. I'll be spending the next 15 minutes or so talking to you about the first 12 chapters of the book, which is our Unit 1. This is all the different parts or components of music, kind of how we all put it together to give you a clear understanding of how we're going to listen to music as we get into the history of music, which really starts in Unit 2. So I'm going to go through all these different components, so let's get right down to it and talk about our first component in Chapter 1, which is the structure of melody. I chose this first slide here because I was really fascinated by the architecture of this apartment building. It really lends itself to the idea of a musical melody. Most of the time a melody is going to have a series of ups and downs, and this is its phrasing and its contour. Contour is obviously the shape of the melody, and I'm going to be showing you a couple examples of that. Phrase and cadence are really our most two important facets of the melody. Here in these melodic examples, we have three different ones. We have the Ode to Joy, which is a lot like that apartment building. We see a series of ups and downs here. Joy to the World, which goes from a high note to a low note, actually 8 notes apart. And then the Star Spangled Banner, which is again more like that apartment building with a series of ups and downs. Although it's not quite as even as the Ode to Joy is, or like that apartment building was, we still see that it is indeed in a series of ups and downs, and that's what we call its contour. When we look at phrase and cadence, we'll see here in this Amazing Grace example that we have 4 phrases. The contour is moving both up and down, and we will see that really cadence refers to punctuation. We have 4 series of punctuations here, basically 3 commas and a period. We will end with the period down there at the very last phrase where it says complete and sense of rest. So a cadence is really a resting point or a stopping point in music in the melody, and that's really going to be the most important thing that you need to know about melody. Our next chapter really deals with rhythm, and the 2 most important things I really want you to know about rhythm is that it moves music forward in time. That's really our impetus here, and that meter is really what organizes this rhythm into what we call measures or bars. It measures the music for us and gives it a basic beat pattern. All of these other terms that you have here, have your book open when you take your quiz. You'll definitely need to be familiar with them and know what they are, but I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on these because there's so much to cover here. Rhythm is, again, the movement of music in time, and our beat is our regular pulse, and we actually can put these together into groupings of something we call meter. We have lots of different meters, but some of the most important ones are the ones we see most often are duple, which is a 1-2, triple, a 1-2-3, a quadruple, 1-2-3-4, and then I'm going to show you one of the compound meter that is actually in 6. So let's take a look at these examples here. I just went too far. This is what I wrote right here. We see we have our duple meter, which is the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. America is in a 3 pattern. Battle Hymn of the Republic is our 4 pattern, and then Green Sleeves would be our 6 pattern. One, two, 1, 2. One, two, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. One, two, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally our 6 pattern. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So music is always, well, most always, a highly organized idea. We don't really even talk about random occurrence in music until we get well into the 20th century. So rhythm and melody are our two most important features of music. We're going to get into some other organizing features of music here in just a moment. Our next component or feature of music is harmony. Harmony is really the part of music that adds depth to a piece of music. We can have a melody and it can be quite nice, such as the Star Spangled Banner. It's often sung with only voice, maybe at the beginning of a baseball game, something like that. But when we add an accompaniment to a melody, it really adds dimension and depth, just as this picture is much more in depth here than it would be with my daughter drawing a two-dimensional picture on a flat piece of paper. So we can really see the clear difference here between a melody and harmony based upon its dimension and its depth. I'm not so much interested in you guys knowing about the organization of harmony right now. If you've taken fundamentals, if you've taken some theory classes, if you're already a musician, you understand that there are definitely a lot of features about harmony that are very important, but that's really for a more in-depth class. We're not going to take the time to spend a great deal of time with that right now. But we can see here under this example of harmony that we have a clear melody on the top line, followed by a series of chords underneath, and this would be the harmony underneath that's going to augment this melody here. The other really important feature of harmony is going to be this idea of consonance and dissonance. If the world were wonderful and happy all the time, it would actually get to be kind of boring. When you think about tension and release, you think about maybe you had a terrible fight with your girlfriend or your boyfriend and you're so upset and you don't know what you're going to do to fix the problem. And then you talk it out and you work it out and you have this release. You have this relaxation. And they always say the making up is the best part of the fight. And music is like that at all times. We have nothing but a series of tension and release. And this is what makes music interesting. It's what gives it so many different levels and so many different ideas and ways that we have been able to feature music in our lives for thousands upon thousands of years is this idea of consonance and dissonance, this idea of tension and release. And harmony is really what sustains the idea of consonance and release. Chapter 4 really deals with the organization of musical sound. Musical sounds are actually, in Western music, a series of half steps. We go from a white note to an adjacent black note to another white note to an adjacent black note, and so on and so forth up the musical scale. There's actually 12 half steps altogether. This is what this chromatic scale looks like. I'm not so interested in you all memorizing this or having an in-depth knowledge of this. Just know that this is basically how music is organized in our Western system. And a lot of it is based upon the piano because it's an easy way for us to see this organization. The larger structure here is something called a key, where we revolve around a home unit or one particular note. Like if I were in the key of C, this is my home pitch, and this is kind of where I would always want to come back to at different phrases or different cadences within music. And we call that a key structure. And you'll be seeing more of that element in music as we go through all these different pieces that we're going to be learning about here. The two main ways the keys would be organized would be something called major and minor. Major is oftentimes thought of as a happy sound or a bright sound, whereas minor is more of a somber or a darker type of sound. And we will be exploring these ideas at much, much greater length as we continue on in the course. Chapter 5 talks about musical texture. This is very important. I really want you guys to know these terms. There's basically 4 different types. We have monophony or monophonic, polyphonic, homophonic, and homorhythmic. This goes back to the Latin terminology, but we can clearly see these examples here. I'm going to play these for you. Monophonic means one line. We can see here that we have one line of music that you can have multiple performers performing that, but it's only one melody, only one line that you're hearing. Polyphonic means we have two independent lines. They are two melodies that could stand by themselves, but they're being played together at the same time. We're going to hear this. This is a very popular wedding song. It's by J.S. Bach. So you've probably heard this second example before, and we'll see that this is an independent melodic line as well as this being an independent melodic line. And we call that polyphony. This is called homophony or homophonic. And basically, this is like a song texture, which is what we hear most often, where we have a clearly defined melody with a harmonic structure underneath that's only providing secondary help. It's not the primary melody like we hear in the first line. And finally, we have homorhythmic, which is where we have a group of people singing the same text to the same rhythms. They might be singing in chords, however, it's homorhythmic because they're singing the same line of text along with the same rhythmic idea. So let's take a listen to these four examples. This is our monophony, our monophonic sound. This is chant. So it might sound a little strange, but we'll be getting into this in Unit 2. So we have one singer there singing one line of music. It could be multiple singers as long as they're just singing the same line of music. Here's that polyphonic example, two independent lines playing together at the same time. This is the first line. We can hear the pedal of the organ underneath providing harmony, but right now we only have one musical line going at the same time. Now we're going to add the second line. Here it's playing independently, so it's still basically monophony or homophony. It's kind of being thrown back and forth here. Now we have it at the same time. So the deal with polyphony is that the two lines don't have to be going uniformly together at the same time. You can hear they were kind of going back and forth with each other, but they were crossing and becoming independent musical lines while they were actually being played together. So it's definitely a complicated type of texture there. This is our homophony, where we have a musical line with accompaniment underneath. So there we had actually the melody with a nice accompaniment underneath, and that's what we call homophony. And finally, we're going to have our homorhythmic example, which is the Hallelujah Chorus. So we have the orchestra accompanying the singers underneath, and they were all singing in the same rhythm with the same words. And so that's what we call homorhythm. This program that I use only allows us to have 15 minutes of time per recording. So I will be setting up the second recording right after this one so that we can continue on with chapter 6. Thanks, you guys.